Hello, people of the galaxy. My name is Detective Snoopers, and today we will be looking at a peculiar object I came across, the Binder, explained in a two-part video by Zach, the author and creator of the Chaos Galaxy. It is full of hidden work, hidden concepts, and ideas that we have never seen in the history of the galaxy. Today I will be analyzing and compiling this information, but be warned, some of this content may be a little shocking to your close-minded brains. Let us begin. One of the first things we saw was a rough design for the planets. There were 7 planets initially created. You had Shultz, which had a ring wrapped its throat. You had Barrow, which looked the most to its now modern counterpart, with the spiky city and the canyons. You had Taros, which is now known as Gaius, looking also similar to its modern counterpart. You had Pulvid, or what was originally known as Pulfian, obviously regarding Roca. And you had Arcus, the cold planet, or the water planet, that most likely contained that element, yet it is somewhat unsure what this planet was originally supposed to be. Balinx is particularly interesting. Balinx, Baleron, and Balix, respectively, or Baleron was once going to be called Balak, most likely referring to the color black. This planet had some weird names. I researched these names and could only find weird music and a Hindu god. Fascinating to say the least. But we must keep going with haste. We only have so much time. Here is a much more refined version of the planets. You have Shultz, the red fire planet, Barrow, the brown desert planet, Syndio split with Syndian, the heaven yellow planet, and Sindel, the hell purple planet, Gaius, the green earth planet, Ruka, with 2 O's instead of the 1 that we know today. Very interesting. It is a grey dust wind planet. And Pelisium, the blue ice planet. Some of these merely circles of themselves. Here is a photo of the final planets, and also the sun. This confirms to us that the sun was, in fact, part of the galaxy. We still don't know exactly how this galaxy is able to revolve. Is it similar to the solar system? We don't know, but we do know that there is a sun. Here we have a rough drawing of the humongous ancient rock man. It's interesting to look at how many different faces it went through before getting its final form. And only half of it was sketched, but you can get a good idea of how it was supposed to look. Impressive, and something that you will see become less common as the time goes on and Zach becomes more proficient. Here are some different sketches of other various creatures. You have a magnet creature, something we do not see today, although would look very well as part of the creatures. Possibly a Teklar creature. You have what will be bull-eyed Duckstrog. The Drangel, which used to have horns and some duality towards it with a angel wing but also a demonic wing. Very interesting to say the least. Guster, who looked much different from today, more humanoid and gusty. You had Blade Demon, something that would not come until much later, but was conceived very early on. and you had what looks to be similar to a Yu-Gi-Oh card, the Pot of Greed. Thankfully, this never made it into the game. These are some counters, some point counters, or star counters, that were going to be produced, along with the fact Zach did get a review from a factory company, which would have been interesting and taken the game in a vastly different direction. These are interesting, and I would love to see them in the future. Here is a sketch of one of the early creatures, named and classified as Wagon. Wagon the Dragon, with a wagon and a dragon. Barely colored, but fully sketched, this was an initial concept that all the creatures were going to be big. Now, it's just a relic of the past. Maybe someday it will make it into the game. If enough people cry for it, and shout #SaveWagon. Here is a list of all the early set creatures, resembling a lot of what would happen. In fact, this was so intriguing, I decided to compile a list of all of it. This list contains all of what I could record from Zach's early Set 1 sheets. As you can see, the green marks that these are actual cards that are in-game, and the fact that it used to be more elemental, just like Zach's previous game. I have theorized that water is Polysium, fire is Shios, nature/forest is Gaias, rock is Barrow, sky is Roka, heaven is Sidian, hell is Sindel. And then there are a few interesting ones. You have Ancient, which, in my opinion, does not equate to anything that is in the game at this point. Machine seems like an early version of Teklar, as some of the cards seem very similar to the Teklar now current counterparts. And Outer Space seems to be a bit of a no planet card. We will quickly speed through this. As you can see, it's the name Planet Ability, which shows either yes or no, with no actual ability written, power, and health. The interesting thing about these powers and health is that they do not go over 300, which is a bit interesting to think about. Now, in terms of notable cards, we of course have Wagon here, being a sky creature with decent stats comparatively to most of these cards, but in today's standards would be severely weak. There's Thousand-Hide Fish, Fire Knight Pyragon, which would later become Pyronite, Trank being Trekatrank, Cataplunk being Cataplunk. There's Clarm, which is Atom Warrior, and some more knights, but some of these are interesting. Heaven Knight, Transcendion, is most likely Divine Knight. Bat Daemon might have been Batata, but since it's a set 4 creature, we will not know, especially since it comes from Sindel. Mechanical Knight, Macarox, maybe Cyanite, but also has an ability which is interesting. Space Knight, Cosmicon, which makes me think it's the boss monster. However, considering its low health, it reminds me more of Infi the Galactic Squire. But I'd say that this was an early version of Infinite. There's Hell Knight, or as it's called, Beelzebub, which translates to another name for the devil. Quite interesting. Utopia's Guard, Bea, most likely an early version of Utopian on Guard. There's the Boulder Dragon archetype, which was originally conceived much earlier than it was made. And you have a female Boulder Dragon as well. The Mighty Boulder Dragon is now the Big Boulder Dragon likely. And there's no Berserk Boulder Dragon. There's Tiki Talk, which made it into the game, but is now not aged, but Gaius. There's the Wildwood archetype, an interesting archetype that we will get to more on later with some of the support cards. Overall, this is a very basic archetype that would have resulted in some very bland cards, in my opinion. There's Barg, which reminds me of Blarg, but it's hard to tell. There's Orbov, that made it early on, but it was Outer Space instead of Sindian. Frozboz. There was Bamumu, and Crazy Chicken Man, which might have been an early version of Demented Chicken Man, although this one was Sky, and it had an ability. Roborg Dragon reminds me of Tech Dragon, although probably wasn't directly inspired. And then you have Commander Crossbones, and Jellyfish. There's Galagon, which reminds me a lot of Omnius, being outer space and sounding like the big boss creature. Whether or not this is directly related to Omnius' creation is unknown. Crabma seems to be an early version of Shiosian Lava Crab, or Macrablab? We will not know. There's weird names like whatever this is. There's Screenback Serpent, which is most likely Spineback Serpent, and Super Spicy Curry Man, as well as Guster. In terms of supporting items, these actually had written abilities. There are familiar ones like Point and Lucky Star, but then the similarities start to end a bit. There are these different juices, such as Strength Juice, Mix-Up, Life Juice, Draining Juice, and other ones, Muscle Shrinking Juice. All of these seem to be relating to power and health, which is interesting to think about, because a lot of these relate to Galactosaber. Like this one, it gains 50 power. This one gains 40 health. There's also Mix-Up, which reminds me of Mystical Relic Golden Chalice, where it shuffles the cards. There are ones specific to different types of creatures, one being Alien, which is not mentioned in any of these creatures. Interesting to think about. Surprise, surprise reminds me of AAA, as it says when your opponent plays an activator, kill it. Atom Bomb seems to be somewhat directly inspired into Beast of the Black Hole, and when an elemental is played, kill all elementals on the pitch. Much more powerful, but still interesting nonetheless. There's Boulder Dragon's Call, a support for the Boulder Dragon creatures, saying when you play Boulder Dragon, pre-play one Boulder Dragon elemental from your deck, which, considering the Boulder Dragon's status, would work wonders for them. There are also a few Wildwood cards, like Wildwood Fortress and Wildwood Beacon, making the Wildwood deck look incredibly powerful. And overall, these abilities, as you can see, can sometimes be insanely powerful. When a Wildwood creature is on the pitch, it gains 200 power and can attack all creatures on your opponent. And it stops there. But as you can see, these are very general and very, very, very powerful cards. Thankfully, some of these we did not get, or else we would be flooded with very general cards. I have posted a link down in the description. Just be secret about it. Do not share it with too many people, as this isn't really supposed to be known to the public. Indeed, this is very interesting, and just like the sketches, would be something that would become more automated and refined as Zach got more proficient. Here we have some Elementals cards, something that seems out of place in this binder, but does in fact hold a few secrets. Up on the top left we see Skellicle, which would become the set 3 card Skellicroll. The other skull cards did not make it into the game. One had 3 heads, another had a cape, one was gold, one was the Underlord, and one was very, very lava and bones, as it seems. There was also the choice and affected card. All of these cards show relics of the past, and are something that, although they didn't make it into the game, would be interesting to see in the future. We also see Commander Crossbones, which would not come out until set 3, but seemed to be conceived earlier on. And we see some early concepts of the Weatherman, with Tornado, Fogeye, and Sunny. These arts would never make into the game, but similar beings such as Weatherman Clued and Weatherman Soon would. Is a concept of different fish and Polysium creatures that would have been in the game. You have Leviathan, God of the Deep, Death Twister Leviron, Baby Leviron, Thousand-Eyed Fish, Shlobafulaba, Twin Leviron, Tentacle Leviron, Spine-Side Leviron, and Jellyfished. There's also, on the right, some concept sketches of this art with dragons, and these are much more menacing than the creatures that we see today. There was also seen to be an evolving system, directly taking inspiration from one of Zack's previous games, Evolvers. Leviron, God of the Deep, has much health similar to Cranchon, with just a bit more health. In fact, many of these cards have what you could call overpowered stats in relation to their stars. Death Twister Leviron has 400 power and 50 health for 6-star. It says when you cosplay this, you can pay 3 stars to kill every non-Leviron elemental on the pitch, and free play 1 Leviron elemental from your hand, but its health becomes 30. This is incredibly powerful, setting up 2 card boards in an instant. Baby Leviron is where it gets even more crazy. 250, health 150 for a 4-star. Pretty amazing. And not only that, but we see when this dies, you can add 1 Leviron elemental from your deck to your hand and reduce its stars by 4. Not only do you get to search for one of these cards, any of them, but you get to pay with a vastly cheaper price. You could bring out Leviron God for 4 stars. Crazy. Thousand-Eyed Fish had 150 power and 260 health for 3 stars, which would have been insanely overpowered. Shlobafuba has 130 power and 110 health, and 2 stars, which means that it is pretty powerful for a 2-star. And it also says you can reveal 1 water elemental from your hand to free play this card from your hand, making it a cheap and powerful 2-star to play for free. Twin Leviron has 300 power and 280 health, 6 stars, and you can kill 1 Leviron on your pitch, so this card can attack twice and double its attack for this turn only. Essentially, what this means is it can attack for 6 points, twice, for 6 stars. Spine-Side Leviron has 230 power and 430 health for 6 stars, which the health is insanely over what you would consider for a 6-star, especially with 230 power. But it is also kind of balanced. Jellyfish has 200 power and 90 health, and is a 2-star in this, with an ability, something that did not transfer into the original game, something that did not transfer into the actual game. The creature reads, if a creature card attacks and kills the card, afterwards that card loses 100 power and 100 health. For this to be a 2-star that can swing for 2, and can also weaken the opponent's creatures, it makes it incredibly powerful. It would have been cool if it had an ability like this, even if it had less great stats. Here is a better picture of what happened, and also some strange numbers deciphering numbers equaling numbers. We do not know what exactly this means. This might have been a debuff to the creatures, as everything highlighted is less. What does young mean? We will never know. Other prototype cards came about in the Binder Part 2, where we saw some early designs for the Gomics. First, on the bottom, we have Go, an art that was used, and with the ability it says pay 4 stars and free play 1 decked Gi. One interesting thing to note is that Gi is spelled with 2 E's, something that we don't see today. Another interesting thing is 4 stars for 1 decked Gi is in some respects quite powerful. 4 stars may be a little bit of a cost, but if it's any Gi, then that means that you can play Gis with more than 4 stars for less, making this card somewhat powerful. You had radioactive waste, which makes sense in terms of the Gi's lore. The attached creature is treated as if it were played by the special ability of Gi. This would have bypassed any ability of the Gis and would have helped decently, but most likely not that well. You have nuclear disaster. When your opponent plays a creature whilst you have Gi on your pitch, kill that creature. This is incredibly powerful, as it allows you to simply knock over any card that the opponent plays as long as you have Gis on the board, and can severely limit the opponent. Thankfully, this card is not in the game. Then you have radioactive mutation, with art of a simply grotesque mutation of the Gi as it turns into its monstrous form. It reads, when an atomic creature is played on your pitch by a special ability of the Gi, you can change its special ability to the ability of one of your dead atomic creatures. As you can see, the name changed from Gi to atomic, showing the many different wording phrases used to describe these archetypes. You can change the special ability, which means that not only do you have a card to bypass the Gi combo, but now you have something that can mutate it in a different way. Interesting to say the least. Above, you can see these cards called the Animex, and this might be in correlation to what we'll see next. The Utopanons. Although the Utopanons are known to just be simply the guards of Sindian, from these pictures it makes it more clear that they are mechs. Due to their gray parts, it seems like they're made out of metal. The circles remind me of clockworks, or things that would be automated. Essentially, what I am trying to conclude is that the Utopanons are robots. It is crazy to think about that. What I am trying to conclude here is that the Utopanons were once robots. They were clockwork machines. They were steampunk machines. What this implies for the lore, I do not know. Another interesting item is these sketches of early Utopanons, with the bottom 2 making it, and the snake-like one being turned legless, while one was unused, being that of 2 bows. An interesting card that I wouldn't mind seeing as extra Sindian support. Next, we have some more Gomics, that being Gi, which had a much more smiley face at the beginning, and said at the start of your turn, after this card is killed by an attack, you can freely play one atomic creature from your hand, similar to the ability today. You also have Atomic Gics, with power 230, health 150, and a 4-star, being decently powerful for that. You have Atomic Gao, having a power of 100 and a health of 210 for a 3-star, being pretty decently statted, although cannot do much in the grand scheme of things. On another note, Atomic Gics seems to be like Atomic Gurplegren, with tentacles spitting out, possibly an earlier vision. Then you have Atomic Gics, the original 400 boss that we see today, this time with no art. Its power is 410, health 370, and is 8 stars. If this card is played by the special ability of Gics, it gains 100 power. This makes it a whopping 510 power, and with 370 health, this is quite a solid ability. If only the Atomic Gics we see today had that kind of power. Atomic Gore, now known as a different name, seems to be power 140 and health 310 with 5 stars, making this an incredibly beefy 5-star, only with not too much power. If this card is played by the special ability of Gics, it gains 90 health, making it even more defensive, yet still, again, not able to do much. Then you have Atomic Giga, now known as Atomic Goka, with power 160 and health 100 for 4 stars, seems weaker than what it is today. But if this is played by the special ability of a Gics, kill one creature on the pitch. This allows it to easily bypass any cards. There are also 3 other cards on the bottom. Atomic Geth, 100, 160 for a 3-star, and it says if this card is played by a special ability of Gics, you can kill one effector or activator on the pitch, making this a pretty good counterpart to Atomic Giga, doing the other jobs for the effectors and activators. You have Atomic Gem, with a monster coming out of this strange body, being on par with the mutation card in creepiness. Power 90, health 220, and a 4-star. If this card is played by a special ability of Gics, you can add 1 dead Gics, making this a good recycler card. Although 4 stars makes it a little weak in terms of the power line. Then you have Giga. Power 40, health 40, and 1 star. You can kill this card on your pitch to add 1 dead Gics to your hand, which essentially allows Gics to be brought back. This is an incredibly useful card, something with an ability that I'd like to see for the Gics today, as one of the hugest problems comes from the lack of being able to get Gics back. Of course there is Go, but there needs to be more ways of recycling Gics. One thing that I noticed about the art of the cards is sometimes the color was missing. It seems that Zach did not have the required resources to fully fill in the colors. A shame for some of these cards, but nonetheless, something interesting to note of. Maybe someday he will fill them in with the colors he now has. What also surprised me was the size of cards, whether it was the length of Wild Wing, the impressive detail of Infinite, or the fact that Omnius took up an entire page made me appreciate this art more and more. I also enjoyed seeing cards with rainbow, as it showed how cool rainbow can look on paper, and also sometimes how small cards were, like Thorngabok, which is only a fraction of the size of Underwood Burrower. In terms of concept sketches, we saw some with Booplebrick and some of the Night Jungle showing more early designs, but one particular strange thing was Trom, which has a different eye on the right. This is strange because that means that Zach, in post-processing, made both of these eyes dots. But it's interesting that he decided to try a different eye, which looks much more human. Could this mean that Trom has something trapped in it? We don't know, and was probably only a concept. There's other sketches such as the Ozos, which you can see in this, or Point Phantom, which had some more detailed design than it does today, as well as the crystals, which look very beautiful. Now, there were some unused creatures. In set 1, we see the sketches for a star creature and an icy skater creature. I wouldn't mind seeing these in the game, nor would I care for them, but they're interesting to see different Polysium creatures being thought out. In terms of the boulder dragons, which we recently discussed as an early idea for cards, you can see that there is a concept for the boulder dragon, concept for baby boulder dragon, and some more realistic dragon sketches going on. In set 4, we saw Teklar, and these notes show the amount of depth put into the world building. The city is New Barrow, and it is the biggest spaceport in the galaxy. There is a mountain range for wildlife, and there's a research satellite that does research and the magic. It has the biggest research facility in the entire galaxy, and there's Nuclear, which is super secret, and nobody knows about it. It also seems that there were some numbers that were left undone, showing that Zach did not fully flesh out the world. The effort put in is still admirable. More new cards and more concept sketches come from this page out of set 2, with a concept art of Wackuman having much more realistic hands, and this strange creature, if you would call it, with strange human-like but still abstract stone features. We do not know exactly what this is. Also, possessed patrolman's body is not colored. Just wanted to point that out. This is a concept for a card that seems to be either a shield or an ice ball around Tananananan. These are concept sketches for other things, one being a spike-fanned sort of creature, which would be interesting to see in the game, and another which looks like Duple Drop, but might have been something different. We do not exactly know. Most likely a concept for Duple, though. There is this weird mini-sketch that I am unsure of what it is. It is quite possibly Bamumum, but it could be something else. In set 5, we see this tangly creature all written out, but never fully completed. And this Boss Squaz, or what was going to be a Boss Squaz character, in an angle that is somewhat awkward, but interesting to see a different type of Boss Squaz, one more Squaz-like. There was this card that was fully created, but never made it into the game, showing the equipment of the Skullcross gear. This laser thing up at the top seems to have these people doing something. It's very hard to tell based on the size of the thing and the lack of color and completion, but it seems to be a card idea. And also, Homing Seeker for some reason is printed upside down in a rough sort of draft down there, and it seems like Homing Seeker was made much before set 3. There was also a kiwi fruit, something that I would love to see in the game. More of these completed yet scrapped ideas come from the shrooms, Soul Shroom being already in the game, but the other two, one being rock and one being more green and yellow, have not made it into the game, as well as these cores, which, although less interesting, may make it into the game at some point. We also see these puppets, with one being in the game as of set 5, Puppet Abomination. But this dog and this crocodile may very well make it, as maybe a possible archetype. In set 4, we saw an incredibly beautiful picture of a skull, maybe possibly used for Sindel, and is very beautiful and shows how drawing with markers can still create fantastic visual effects. There's also this set 4 Polysium creature, as it seems, of this eel-like creature with bubbles coming out as a concept. Very interesting, and just shows how many card arts were scrapped even though they were fully completed. This is a Dustrog that never made it into the game, and this is the Darkstone Beast, with seemingly a mouth that was supposed to be on it, but never was. Thankfully, I think this gives the beast a much better, more mysterious effect, rather than scary. And the serpent used to be a combiner, not just an incredibly powerful card that is meta and can be used to beat basically everything, but a combiner. Would have this been a better decision? Who knows? And finally, some more unfinished concepts, with one being of this guard-like creature, obviously based off of where he was when he was creating this in Mexico, in some way and somehow, as well as a book that seems to be detailing the story of the galaxy. Maybe this will actually make it into the game, according to Zach. All in all, we have learned a lot from this classified discussion. Please keep it secret from everybody else. I do not want word spreading about that all the creatures are made up and are stored as paper in this binder. Why am I even making this video? What am I even doing? I don't know. I gotta shut this off.